What's going on, everybody? My name's Tenebris Infinite, and I'm coming at you dudes with a Reaper Buster Vanguard build for Generation Zero. So before the Reaper was introduced, I spent a week optimizing and designing this build for a Vanguard that is pretty overpowered, I'm not gonna lie. This is maybe one of the best builds in the game for taking on some of the heavier, stronger, more damage dealing enemies in Generation Zero. And what enemy in Generation Zero deals the highest damage right now? The Reaper. So it's really cool, my dudes. I conceptualized this whole build without having a Reaper to test it against, but after having this past week of testing here, I can hands down say that this Vanguard build is easily the best Reaper Buster build in the game. So basically, if you want to take down the Reaper solo, this build is the build for you. And if you want to take down the Reaper as a team, then maybe as a team you might want to use like maybe 2 or 3 of these builds on your team, just to make sure that you've got as much damage dealing potential and as much damage resistance potential as absolutely possible. Now, let's get into these skills so that way you dudes can know the kind of way you should go through your trees here in order to build up this Vanguard. And the other thing too is we're going to talk about apparel sets as well after these skills. And on top of that, I'm going to have this skill setup kind of written out in the description down below so that way you can maybe copy it down to like a notepad or something like that and keep it on hand while you're building yourself your very own Reaper Buster. So first things first, let's go through the combat tree. So we got the first skill of aim speed so that way we could progress further on down the tree. Now, we only take 1 perk from hip shot accuracy because you aren't going to be firing from the hip very much when you're dealing with the Reaper. You're traditionally going to be aiming down sights a lot. Next up, we've got weapon recoil, which we maxed out so that way we are having the most control over our gun when we're firing in full auto or when we're utilizing the experimental PVG to just reduce that recoil and maximize our accuracy. And then lastly here, we maxed out weapon sway to again just improve that weapon control so that way when we're aiming for those little floating points of the shield generators, it just makes it so much easier to actually target them and to take them down quickly and efficiently. Now, next up for the right side of the tree, we maxed out our reload speed so that way when we're reloading things like the experimental KVM, we are getting the fastest reload we possibly can with long reload times. As well, this gives us the opportunity to reload our PVG really quickly. That way we can pop those shield generators the moment that they shut off. Next up, for the run and gun, we only got 1 perk of this because, again, it's just kind of a passing perk to move on to the next one. For armor, we got the plus 10 bullet damage resistance and the plus 10 explosive damage resistance, but we didn't get any gas resistance. And this is specific because a lot of times when you're fighting the Reaper, you don't really need to worry about his gas attacks too much. You need to worry more about his bullet damage, his explosive damage, his melee damage when he's sprinting at you, and then also the thermobaric. But we're going to get into the thermobaric with my next video, actually. So for now, there really isn't any way to survive the thermobaric, but getting that explosive damage resistance makes us more durable when it comes to those kind of toxic rockets, the same ones that the harvesters use. So then next up, we've got armor damage, and this is, again, just maximizing our damage potential against the Reaper as we're fighting him. So we max this out as soon as possible. And then trigger happy, again, is improving our damage with full automatic fire, which will benefit the use of the experimental KVM or any sort of LMG or any sort of battle rifle against the Reaper. And then finally, we go for the Vanguard as our specialization. And this is just a sole Vanguard build, no cross specialization. And so the Vanguard is basically just like your perfect damage resistance increase here in Generation Zero. Now, we skip the whole support tree because it's just not useful. None of the skills in it are very useful for dealing with the Reaper. Next up, we come on over to survival. And this is where you dudes might scratch your heads a little bit, but I actually decided to opt for, like, only the bare minimum of running speed, stamina, and stamina recharge. Because really, when you're fighting against the Reaper, unless if you're looking to run away from the thermobaric, you really don't need to run around too much. It's more so about getting the Reaper into optimal positions so that way you could take him down quickly and easily. Now, moving on, we max out our carry capacity just to make sure that we can carry as many advanced medkits as possible, because realistically, that's the type of medkit that you want to be using on this build due to its maxed out health and due to the fact that the Reaper does a lot of damage very quickly. And then lastly, steady feet, just to ensure that we aren't being knocked down when we don't want to be. And then lastly here, we max out the health amount in order to, again, just improve our ability to soak up damage and to actually take a hit. And then finally here for the tech tree, we pass through spotting intel and inquisitive mind in order to get to component damage so that way we can max out our component damage and again, just really improve that damage potential of this Vanguard build. So there you dudes go. It's pretty simple in concept. Basically, the idea is maximize weapon control, maximize weapon damage, maximize our ability to absorb damage, and just kind of make that all work synergistically in order to ensure that our Reaper fights are as optimal as possible. Now, next up for the apparel schematics that you want to apply to your character so that way you can, again, improve that damage resistance of this Vanguard in order to make sure that he could survive anything that the Reaper's going to throw at him, bar the thermobaric attack. So first things first, you want to have some sort of blast resistance going on. You don't need the full 5 crown, but if you have the opportunity to give yourself a 5 crown of any of these schematics, definitely do it. So you want to run at least 1 blast resistance, or maybe 2. Now next up, fire resistance, because the bullets that the Reaper shoots out are incendiary. So you want to be able to reduce that burn damage and that burn time as much as possible, just to ensure that you aren't getting absolutely ripped apart when you're trying to heal off the machine gun fire that you've already endured. I personally highly advise running 2 sets of fire resistance as opposed to 2 sets of either the explosive or the bullet damage, because this way you'll be able to just ensure that that chip damage isn't going to be something that you need to micromanage while you're fighting the Reaper. And then lastly, bullet resistance. And again, that's just to make sure that you're able to tank that machine gun fire from the Reaper himself. Alright, my dudes, so now I'm just gonna kind of let this Reaper fight play out so that you guys can see this Vanguard in action and see all of these skills and all of these schematics kind of work synergistically together here against the Reaper. So there you dudes go, the Reaper Buster Vanguard build. This, again, I cannot stress this enough. This is the best build in the game for dealing with the Reaper. I've compared it against typical Vanguard, I've compared it against your typical Engineer, I've compared it against your typical Marksman. None of them can take down the Reaper as quickly or as efficiently as this specific Vanguard build. So I hope you dudes have fun whipping yourselves together your very own Reaper Busters. I highly, highly advise it. Cannot stress it enough. This is a meta build for you dudes. But for now, I've been Tenebris. You've been awesome. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you dudes in the next one. Until then, peace.